all of this is wild.
All the remains pertain to wild animals. There's no sign of domestic herbivore.
So then what does this tell us about the people at Göbekli Tepe?
It implies that we are still dealing with hunter-gatherers at Göbekli Tepe.
The entire area prior to the appearance of Göbekli Tepe is inhabited only by hunter-gatherers. There's no agriculture whatsoever. They haven't built anything ever. And then suddenly, without any background or any preparation, appears this huge megalithic site, which is incredibly sophisticated. Turns out, at the same moment that Göbekli Tepe pops up, suddenly agriculture appears in that same region of Turkey. What we're looking at is a transfer of technology. This was the survivors of a lost civilization. They already knew how to create megaliths. They already knew how to do agriculture. They settled amongst a hunter-gatherer people who they may have reached out to before. They settled amongst them and they created this project. And this project was to restart their civilization.
Are these aliens? Are they humans?
No, they're humans.
Humans.
They're human beings.
The suggested dates that are coming out via astronomy is around 9,400 BC, which conforms absolutely perfectly with the radiocarbon evidence that's come out from stuff that they've removed from the actual walls, which they believe was in situ from the time of construction. Oh, the ones that Graham showed.
So we are here in a very exposed position on top of the mountain, the highest place here in the region. So it was clear. So they chose this place because of its visibility, the importance of the location. Yes, it was not hidden in some valley or in the plains, but it was on top of the highest mountain here, visible from all sides.
We have this sense of a time capsule here. It's not been contaminated by later cultures. It was buried.
Say again? Buried temples? Apparently so. These people went to great lengths to entomb these structures, and by doing so created a hill of 300 meters in diameter, as seen in this photograph before the excavation began. Mind-boggling. At Göbekli Tepe, only 6 of a possible 20 temples have been unearthed as of today. The tip of the iceberg, one might say. Down below, another 14 are waiting to see the light.
And they're all following one main idea. The main idea is there are 2 very huge, 2 monumental pillars in the center of such an installation. There are enclosures, and the enclosure walls are surrounding them, and there are more pillars set in the enclosure wall. So we have the appearance is more of a stone circle than of a building. And it's quite clear that the monumental stone circles had not been roofed, so there was no roof. They had been open-air installations.
These same era temples from 12,000 years back, unearthed at Göbekli Tepe, show 3 different styles of form. They have been categorized as B, C, and D, all with different patterns. For example, while the pillars at C form a spiral, the same at D have an elliptic pattern. There is also the fact that the surrounding pillars at said temples vary in number. The only similarity between the 2 are the facing twin T-pillars at their respective centers. One might ask, what on earth do these T-shaped pillars depict?
In the center of the whole story are the T-shapes, because we can understand the T-shape as a stilized human being. We can be sure because in some cases we have the arms and we have the fingers depicted. So we have a stilized human being. This is T-shapes as human beings. And so we understand these stone circles as a gathering, as a meeting of such stone beings. 2 very important in the center, surrounded by other ones which are looking similar, which are smaller, less in size.
This first gathering that laid the foundation stone of uncharted human history apparently happened at Göbekli Tepe. Then what are these pillars trying to tell us?
So, and on these stone beings, we have very often carvings of animals or abstract symbols in combinations, in scenes. So sometimes they are acting on these pillars. So the idea is that these Stone Age stone beings telling us, or the carvings are telling us stories about them, what's going on. They are telling us myths of this time.
At Göbekli Tepe, there is a symbolic statement passing us data from 12,000 years back. There is the depiction of abstract symbols, as well as vivid animal carvings of the fox, the boar, the crane, the snake, the spider, and the bull. The hieroglyphics of ancient Egypt, to our knowledge the birthplace of scripture, were also known as sacred signs and revolved around symbols. When we look up the word symbol from Old Greek symbolain, this is what we come across. In the broadest sense, a symbol is a device used as an identifying mark. A symbol is also the key to understand and recall the transcendental and timeless values it represents. But how does the human mind produce symbols?
Sure, it's not writing in the sense of signs which can be phonetically expressed. So true writing means we have language, but here we have something different. We have symbols which are expressing stories, maybe. So not in connection with language and not in connection with phonetic terms, but ideas. They are expressing ideas. They are expressing stories.
Symbolically speaking, among the unearthed portion, the most expressive and resourceful temple at Göbekli Tepe is currently the one marked D. Temple D is surrounded by 12 stylized humans in the form of T shapes. The number 12 has a special place in mythology and the history of religion. We will look into that in a moment. But for now, let us look at a certain pillar called T number 33 and the symbols engraved on it.
Pillar we have a very interesting sequence of motifs which are here in a vertical row, which is much more than just decoration. And this sequence of motifs, it's reminding us maybe on Egyptian hieroglyphs. It's clear that we don't have writing here, but we have symbols which we can understand partially and partially not. We have here snakes, for example, it's clear, but here in symbol it's an H-shaped sign. We don't know the meaning of this symbol.
This particular symbol appears on most of the T-shaped pillars excavated up to now. In fact, it appears on almost every pillar at Temple D.
And here an animal, an unusual animal for depictions, an insect-like animal with 6 legs and the body of an insect, very well depicted. Again, 3 snakes here in the lower part, followed by a very small animal looking like a sheep or a goat. And again, an insect with many legs here with 8 legs. Now here we had 6 legs with 8 legs, being clearly a spider. And this sequence is on both sides shows the heads of snakes, which we have here, but the bodies of the snakes are not on this face, they are at the other face of the pillar. So they are coming around the pillar and giving here a frame to this sequence of motifs.
On the southeast face of this pillar we see crane motifs, of which there are many more at Temple D as well as the other temples. The crane shows up as a significant symbol in many cultures. It represents the teachings of Hermes in ancient Egypt, appears in the traditional kabuki Japanese dance drama, as well as in Australian Aboriginal dances. Were the T-shaped representations of humans at Göbekli Tepe the first ever god depictions in mythology? Resource literature claims that the Sumerians, as well as civilizations that followed, namely the Akkadians, Assyrians and the Babylonians, all show polytheistic character. There seems to be thousands of gods. However, when it comes to the pioneers of writing, the Sumerians, my own research begs to differ. The Sag-Bar tablet, written in both Sumer and Akkad languages. Let's hear what it says. Incantation, oath, Insurmountable circle of oath. Insurmountable divine circle of oath. Heaven and earth's unaltered circle of oath. God is one and cannot be changed. God and man shall not be divided. Could the divine circle of oath be interpreted as the zodiac? The zodiac is considered the house of the 12 constellations astronomically, and astrologically home of the 12 signs of the horoscope.
The zodiacal signs may not be exactly as they are today, but nevertheless the zodiacal signs were used at the dawn of civilization, which is described in the Vedas, the dawn of agriculture, because these were needed for the calendar, the 12 months of the year, the 12 Adityas, as they are also called, the 12 pillars, as they have been described in later mythology. These are very, very old indeed.
Was the heaven's unaltered circle of oath, namely the zodiac constellations, known to humanity much earlier than the scientific estimates put forward today? Ancient wisdom as well as religion was onto the number 12 more often than not. The clock we use today is based on the number 12. The Chinese calendar evolves around 12 animals. The Hittites, who ruled in Anatolia 3,800 years ago, had 12 gods. 12 imams are the cornerstone of the Alevi faith. As per the Old Testament, the Israelites consisted of 12 tribes. And last but not least, Jesus surrounded himself with 12 apostles. With a 6,000-year head start, could ground zero for all these 12s be the 12 T-shaped pillars in Temple D at Göbekli Tepe? In this context, was Temple D the Earth's unaltered circle of oath in the Sumerian Sagbar text? At the center of this temple, on the front face of one of the symmetric T's facing west, namely pillar T number 31, we see the relief of a taurine head. The bull head relief is on front face, about chest high. The bull, or Taurus, is also one of the 12 signs of the zodiac. One of the most significant cave paintings from circa 30,000 years back, interpreted as vivifications of hunting parties depicting taurine figures, can be found at the Altamira and Lascaux caverns. In many other cultures, we also come across similar taurine imagery. A wall painting at Çatalhöyük in Anatolia dating back 9,000 years stands out from the rest. Portraying another hunting scene, this same theme, the introduction of the taurine cult belief, can also be seen at sacred grounds on houses within the settlement complex. Fast forward 3,000 years, and the taurine symbol appears as a god in ancient Egypt, as Hathor the cow or Apis the bull, both bearing similar significance. The sun imagery between the horns is called the royal crown. The prevailing symbol we come across when studying ancient Egyptian wall paintings and frescoes is the snake. Symbolized in a number of different categories with varying objectives, the snake is mostly seen on the foreheads of gods as well as pharaohs. Emerging from the forehead, also called the third eye, symbolizing higher consciousness, the snake is frequently associated with the god Ptah. While taking all of this into consideration, interpreting the snake imagery at Göbekli Tepe is somewhat complicated. Some of the T-shaped human depictions snakes face downward, others look just the opposite way. Perhaps one of the 12 pillars surrounding Temple D, namely pillar number 43, with a myriad of symbolic depictions, could be of assistance through some of its motifs.
Right down there is the one that I featured last night with the man bags on it, and the humanoid vulture. Unfortunately, the lower half of the stone has now been buried by the archaeologists, but you can see what it looks like because there's a full frame image of the stone on that board up there.
The exposed part shows a bird carrying a sphere on its wings. Exactly beneath that, we see a scorpion.
In this particular picture, there is the scorpion. There is also something that resembles a swan. Now we know that the Milky Way, the whitish river-like band of light in the sky, begins near Scorpius, the scorpion, the heavenly scorpion, and passes through the swan, Cygnus the swan. And that has been mentioned in Indian literature as the goddess Saraswati or the river Saraswati riding a swan. In ancient Indian literature, symbolically, the sun is described as riding on a bird. Perhaps this is a depiction of the bird carrying the sun with it.
Numerous examples of the sun being represented as a winged disk were already found in Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and ancient Egypt. What are the odds for the depictions on this pillar being the forefather of symbolic celestial expression? Quite high, one might say. Cosmic dust of the Milky Way, the sun, Scorpio, but there are other striking symbols jumping out at us. For example, we haven't got a clue as to what these three signs above, resembling a basket or padlock, mean. On the other hand, the H-shaped, twice used symbol to the right we have seen before. The most fascinating image we have yet to come across, however, is down below. A decapitated human image with a bird portrayal next to it. A similar figure was found at Çatalhöyük, dating some 3,000 years after its first appearance at Göbekli Tepe. But the interesting part is that this figure was also associated with a bird, the same as at Göbekli Tepe. And it does not stop here. There is one other remarkable aspect. While all the figures on the pillars surrounding Temple D face inward towards the two T-shaped pillars at the center, only these two figures face outward. Would it be too far-fetched to interpret this as the immature human with no intellect succumbing to his most primal carnal urges? Let's move on and see whether the pillars of Göbekli Tepe exhibit other human imagery.
Yes, we have several sculptures depicting humans, but in the reliefs we have only two until now. At first we thought the reliefs always are depicting animals. For some years this hypothesis was working. Animals or symbols. But since 2006 we know there also can be included humans, and now in the enclosure F, which we discovered last year or excavated last year, again a human appeared.
The most amazing of such sculptures, the Urfa sculpture, was found at the Yenimahale region of Urfa. Up to this day, this is the oldest human sculpture ever found. Let me draw your attention to the two stripes on the chest pointing downward.
These wreaths are some ornament or some bracelet it's wearing. So we have a lot of beads in our findings, so bracelets. The hand position, it seems that he is holding its phallus, but it's not completely clear.
As we can see, the hand position on this particular one is not very clear. But, referring again to the hand position, how about the other, larger sculpture found at Göbekli Tepe?
It has like this.
Interesting, isn't it? At Göbekli Tepe, all the T-shaped pillars symbolizing human-like beings with hands and arms bear the same pattern in hand position as these later dated sculptures. On the other hand, there is no portrayal of the mouth, is there?
There is no mouth, that's true, that's a funny thing. In Göbekli Tepe we have a head also over life size, which clearly, or quite clearly, had been part of such a statue. Again, no mouth.
To comprehend something that was created by man 12,000 years ago is somehow tricky, especially if it has symbolic connotations. Let's take a look at Temple D again, which is surrounded by 12 T-shaped pillars, stylizing humans. One of the concentrical T-shaped pillars facing east exhibits two other symbols at chest level. One we have seen before, the ubiquitous H-shaped symbol. Maybe from looking at it too frequently, it started looking less and less of an H to me. The image I started to see, however, looked more like two T's holding hands. Just like this. Right below this H, there is the other symbol. A symbol I have come across during research. Could this be the forefather of ancient Egypt's royal crown symbol? What we have here is something akin to a solar disk crown, exclusive to gods and goddesses. Then what is this crescent underneath? The moon? The solar eclipse is one of the most dramatic natural occurrences humans experience. The first historical record of a solar eclipse goes back to 760 BC. King Barakib of ancient Syria made sure that this natural phenomenon was recorded by engraving it on a sculpture, later found in Zinjirli, Anatolia. Other such records are found on Assyrian and Babylonian reliefs. Once again, we cannot help but ask, has the Göbekli Tepe solar eclipse prototype been left as a message for the future? And as the sun and the moon embrace one another in the heavens, do the two T's, by holding hands, mimic the same on Earth?
Ortadaki iki tek kadın erkek.
Funny story is this Duku story, which is not so popular, but I found this story in a book about Sumerian gods and spirits, and the mount of Duku was mentioned there, and the Anuna gods as anonymous gods without names, and on this mount agriculture had been invented.
In the cattle and grain text, this mound, handed to agriculture and livestock farming as a gift from gods, is narrated as follows. In those days, Enki says to Enlil, "Father Enlil, Laha and Ashnan, they who have been created in the Duku, let us cause them to descend from the Duku." At the pure word of Enki and Enlil, Laha and Ashnan descended from the Duku. For Laha, they set up the sheepfold. Plants, herbs they present to him. For Ashnan they establish a house, plough and yoke they present to her. Laha, standing in his sheepfold, a shepherd increasing the bounty of the sheepfold is he. Ashnan standing among the crops, a maid kindly and bountiful is she. Could it be possible that the temples of Göbekli Tepe are behind the legend of Laha and Ashnan, which has its origins in Duku? Perhaps those which the Sumerians accepted as gods were basically humans at a higher level of consciousness, displaying alternate awareness, having already reached a more developed level of evolution. Commenting on what might have existed and occurred before Göbekli Tepe is as hard as predicting the aftermath. Let's look at this clay figurine, 40 centimeters in size, found at a Neolithic settlement site near Adıyaman, which was built about 2,000 years after the temples were buried. This site is just 70 kilometers away from Göbekli Tepe. Could this small statue be a clue to the fact that the rituals have carried on? Perhaps we can draw the same conclusion from a clay vase found at Çatalhöyük. On this vase, we see a human figure with a T-shaped head. Can we deduce from this that 3 millennia after the temples were buried at Göbekli Tepe, there were people still keeping the belief system alive? Paintings found on walls of a holy site at Latmos, dating to circa 4,000 years after Göbekli Tepe was erected, give us a similar impression. Could the humans depicted in these paintings actually be the gods at Göbekli Tepe? The most similar complex to Göbekli Tepe is without a doubt the one on the Spanish island of Menorca. Built 5,000 years after Göbekli Tepe, it is as close to Göbekli Tepe as it gets. Nevertheless, there are no depictions or symbols on any of the T-pillars at that site. Could this site at Toralba Den Salort be interpreted as the living remnants of a belief system long lost? Why were the floors waterproof? What went on in there? Why were they buried 1,000 years after construction? There are a lot of questions with no answers. As to who ran the show, undoubtedly there were the ones with a higher awareness. Worship was a crucial part of their existence.